Yes, I am back. This is the first edition of Beyond Reason Radio this week. Yes, this is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm sure you've all missed your voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason. Stories so beyond reason, they'll leave you flabbergasted. All kinds of good stuff that we've had. I've been doing the morning show. I've been doing Good Morning Orlando here on WFLA. I did it 3 times this week, so that kind of got in the way of me doing this show. And I have missed it so much. So we had to come back and do it tonight. And we are doing it tonight, 6 to 8 p.m. here on WFLA. And we're on Facebook Live as well. You can send me a friend request on Facebook. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. And, of course, we have Mr. Tom Benson producing on this Friday evening. How are you, Tom?
I am fine. It's a great weekend. Spring training baseball game started today. Plus, it's Daytona weekend. Big races on Sunday. I mean, there's a lot going on.
Yeah, I don't want to drive out there, though.
No.
I don't want, I mean, the race might have fast cars, but driving out there, you're pretty much going to be sitting still.
Right. They're not going that fast on I-4. That's for sure.
That's true. So if you want to drive out there, that's, there you go. So I thank you all for joining me. The big story today, actually, there's a lot I'm going to get to today. There's transgender stuff, women's rights stuff that you're going to find extremely interesting, the latest on Obamacare. But the big story today is obviously CPAC. And I have not had a chance to watch every speaker at CPAC because, I have to work and sleep. And they've been continuous for like 3 days now. We're going to play some highlights of some people that I really liked at CPAC. But, of course, Donald Trump, President Trump, talked at CPAC today. And with Trump, I've just decided, and I decided this a long time ago, he's a mixed bag. He really is. There's some good there that he did and some bad there. And the biggest concern I have when Trump speaks at a place like CPAC, and I'm going to get more into this in a second, is it's supposed to be the conservative, political action conference, right? You kind of want some real good conservative principles, some real good limited government conservative philosophy involved, what really motivates the conservative base there. And from what I saw, I didn't really get that, especially from Trump. Trump is all about, and this is why people love him, he is just a man of action. I have action, and we're going to do this, and this. And that's why a lot of people liked him. They think he has this perception of that's who he is. And that's fine, I guess. But in terms of something like this, I just wonder where conservatism is. Because Trump says some things that are conservative, and we'll talk about that. And he says some other things that really aren't. He says some things that are nationalist. And most of what Trump does now, and it seems like this is what the conservative world is obsessed with right now, is attacking the media. It just seems like all we do now is attack the media. My last show, I did a whole show on why I think conservatives hate the media, but I've said before, I'm not going to spend all my time just attacking the media. There's plenty of other voices out there that will do that for you. Trump does it every day. I want to get into the meat of some good conservative ideas and good conservative debate and what's really going on in the world today. And I think sometimes we just waste our time continuously attacking the media. And Trump addressed this in his speech. So, in fact, it's pretty much what he started out with. And Trump, he just cannot stand criticism on anything from the media that makes him not look as big as he is. And he's probably right on this, but this is one thing he started talking about how the media would lie about him getting a standing ovation. And it was actually kind of a funny cut. This is what he said.
If you remember my first major speech, sit down, everybody, come on. The dishonest media, they'll say, he didn't get a standing ovation. You know why? No, you know why? Because everybody stood and nobody sat. So they will say he never got a standing ovation, right? That's the way they are.
It's pretty funny and kind of true, but he just can't let that kind of stuff go. He just can't. He still argues that his inauguration crowd was the biggest crowd, and he still argues that he probably actually won the popular vote if it weren't for illegal immigrants. Anytime the media, criticizes him on something about his popularity or something, he can't stand it. He has to say something. And he has said before, that's who he is. He always punches back. He said that in interviews, I always punch back. And that's what he's doing. It's kind of a funny comment. I'm not, too upset at it, but one of those things, he has to start his speech out by criticizing the media and defending his popularity. I think his popularity is like the most important thing to him. So there you go. 407-916-5400. Text to 23680, by the way, if you have any comments. We're going to play some more Trump cuts here. This one, he was criticizing the media. And this one I kind of disagree with in terms of what he said here. I don't think this is really possible, but, Trump's just shooting from the hip when he says stuff like this. But he talked about the media not using reliable sources or something, which probably happens sometimes. But this is what he said on that.
But I am only against the fake news media or press. Fake. They have to lead that word. I'm against the people that make up stories and make up sources. They shouldn't be allowed to use sources unless they use somebody's name. Let their name be put out there. Let their name be put out.
I mean, why bring that? Why bring that up? Of course, they can't always put the name of sources out there. There's a reason why media outlets do that, and conservative media outlets do this too. It's not. I think Trump has actually done it before too, where he's used anonymous sources. So it's just a silly criticism. You can't, when we start having to call out sources and saying you have to put out all your sources, you can't have any anonymous. They shouldn't be allowed to have an. I mean, come on. There's a reason why they do that. This is not it's not unreasonable to have unnamed sources, but they have to be credible on that. So there we go on that. I think that was just a little silly, but he does make a really good comment here on the First Amendment, and he's exactly right here when it comes to the First Amendment and how a lot of outlets in the media get it wrong when they talk about the First Amendment. And this is what he said on that.
They say that we can't criticize their dishonest coverage because of the First Amendment. They always bring up the First Amendment. And I love the First Amendment. Nobody loves it better than me. Nobody. I mean, who uses it more than I do? But the First Amendment gives all of us, it gives it to me, it gives it to you, it gives it to all Americans, the right to speak our minds freely. It gives you the right and me the right to criticize fake news and criticize it strongly.
I mean, he's exactly right on that. He really is, because the media says, well, we have freedom of the press. It's the First Amendment. Well, the First Amendment also gives Donald Trump the freedom to say all the crazy stuff he says on Twitter and everything. He said earlier in that sound cut, he goes, who uses it more than me? Who loves it more than me? But that's kind of true. If anyone loves the First Amendment, it's Donald Trump. But he makes the point that, the First Amendment does give us the right to also criticize the media. They're not just like, when he says they're fake news, he has every right to say that. When people call out the bias in the media, they have every right. They have every right to say that. And he's exactly right. I don't think Trump, people put these things on Trump. He's going to shut down the media like Putin. No, I don't think he is, really. He might call them out a lot, but he secretly loves it. He loves it. He loves the attention. He loves the attention that he gets from all these people, and he loves trolling them. He totally enjoys a lot of the start of his speech, like the first half hour, it seemed like, was once again trolling the media. He is a troll. He loves trolling the media. And so he's just going to continue to do that. And, it's so funny how this relationship between media outlets and Trump works, because the media pretends like they hate him. And CNN is really going after him now. You can tell they're not happy with Trump in a lot of ways, but they secretly love him. Because he's a gift to all these news outlets to have something to cover constantly. He always has something to say, and he always says something controversial, and he always does all this stuff. And the media, it's easy stuff. It's easy business for the media right now. So they act like they hate Donald Trump, but they secretly love it. He is just a gift to their ratings. He's a gift to them. He really is. So they get on their high horses and criticize Trump, and he's a threat to democracy and all. No, they love it. They love it. I guarantee you. Obama, people forget, Obama had some pretty nasty relationships with some of the media. He shut out Fox News sometimes, basically called them fake news a lot of times. Not only that, but he spied on the media. They had wiretaps on certain media outlets. It was a big story at the time, AP included, so they weren't happy about that. Obama was not as transparent as Trump in a lot of ways. So let's not pretend here that Trump's just going to shut down the First Amendment or something. But I thought that was a pretty funny comment. But the next couple cuts, it's kind of the bad Trump versus the good Trump. When Trump speaks, for one, it was like another campaign speech. I feel like all of Trump's speeches now are just campaign speeches. And Mike Pence, when he was speaking at CPAC, it was basically just promoting Trump. And it's like, okay, you won. That's great. You're not campaigning anymore. I need to see real stuff that you're doing. And one of the problems I have is he talks about we're doing this, we're doing that, but there's not really specifics. We're going to get into in the next hour, in the 7 o'clock hour, I'm going to get into all this Obamacare stuff because I'm seeing a lack of leadership on Obamacare and the repeal and replace. I see a lot of talk, but in terms of action, that's something I really want to see action on is something like Obamacare. And I'm hearing talk of tax cuts, but once again, most of it is just vague talks. I want to see action. But what did you guys think of Trump's speech at CPAC or anybody else who spoke at CPAC? I actually have some audio from Dana Lash, who was at CPAC, the conservative radio host Dana Lash, and she had a really good speech about guns, and I'm going to play part of that as well. And we'll talk about other things that happened in the news. There's so much to get to. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. You can call 407-916-5400. You can text to 23680, or you can comment on Facebook Live. Just send me a friend request on Facebook. We're also on the WFLA Facebook page and the Beyond Reason Radio Facebook page. And we'll get to more of this next, and I'll be right back.
You want to listen to Beyond Reason Radio live on your smartphone? Download the Beyond Reason Radio app now. Available in the Google Play or Apple App Stores. The voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason is back now.
Oh, wait until later this hour. Fox News had this story earlier, so I posted it on my Facebook. A billboard that's out there that some women are finding very offensive. So I threw it on my Facebook page, and you can send me a friend request on Facebook and see it. And I asked women on my Facebook what they thought of it. And the answers I got were very interesting. So we'll get to that later in this hour. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I am your voice of reason, Michael Yaffee, the voice of truth in a world that is beyond reason, joined by Tom Benson producing as well. We've been going over Trump's comments at CPAC, which I happened to watch live earlier today. And I talked about, the first part of his speech was the usual Trump. He says some jokes. He attacks the media, talks about how popular he really is. One thing, before I get to the cuts, one thing that he says a lot, which is going to be popular, whether you like it or not, it's going to be popular, is when he talks about that this is all about America first. And when he says stuff like that, that I think more than as anything right now really resonates with a lot of the American people, because they have felt like for so long that our leaders are not about the American people first. The leaders are not about what individuals, Americans care about. They're more about what the world, other countries are doing or whatever. But I want to hear more than just America first, because it's not necessarily the land that makes this country great. It's the Constitution. It's the principles. It's the ideas of things like limited government that make America great. And when he talks about the people making it great, I agree with that. So some good and bad. It's a lot of nationalism And he gets really good on that stuff, but then he doesn't talk a lot about limited government and actually cutting down the size of government, which is actually kind of goes in the point of this next cut here. And I happen to notice this, and I notice this more in conservative circles, statements like this, and especially from Trump. And it makes me cringe just a little bit. Maybe I'm just being too nitpicky. You can call and tell me that, or comment and tell me that. But this is what he said in terms of how much we spent on wars and everything. That's what he said.
We've spent trillions of dollars overseas while allowing our own infrastructure to fall into total disrepair and decay. In the Middle East, we've spent, as of 4 weeks ago, $6 trillion. Think of it. And by the way, the Middle East is in it's not even close. It's in much worse shape than it was 15 years ago. If our presidents would have gone to the beach for 15 years, we would be in much better shape than we are right now. That I can tell you.
I mean, that's such a nice comment. I don't know if I buy that, for one. I mean, yes, Iraq was kind of a disaster, but it was actually getting a lot better until Obama decided to pull out too early. But to say, we shouldn't have even gone in Afghanistan. We never really went into Syria, so Syria kind of became a mess on its own. You talk about what's happening in Libya, and, the Arab Spring kind of happened without us being there. I don't know. I understand what he's saying, that we go out and we nation build and we do all this stuff, and then sometimes it can create more problems than it's worth. But this whole idea, I just think it's a big lie, this whole idea that if we just stay in this country and do nothing outside this country, that, the world will just kind of figure it out and they'll have their problems and it won't affect us at all. That's usually not how it happens. Usually something happens and then we have to go back out and do something again. But that's just my take. I've talked about the Iraq War before, how I think one of the major reasons why, this is a very politically incorrect on both sides thing to say, but I think one of the major reasons why we didn't have a lot of major terrorist attacks during the Bush administration is because we were in Afghanistan and Iraq. Whether we like it or not, I think by creating the battlefield over there, I think they fought us over there instead of here. And when we pulled out and created that vacuum, I think that's one reason why we haven't had major terrorist attacks here. That's just my opinion. But the point I really wanted to make on this is he talked about we could have spent that money on rebuilding our country. Instead of going overseas and rebuilding the Middle East, we could have spent it here rebuilding our country. And I always get nervous because Democrats say that all the time. That's a big Democrat line. Oh, if we didn't spend all this money on wars, we could spend it here on infrastructure and schools and health care. And that's what I'm talking about when Trump talks about when Trump gets so nationalist. He is so big on nationalism sometimes, but what you have to understand is a lot of this nationalist ideas is still the belief that the government spending can fix our problems. So when he is saying we could have rebuilt our country here instead of spending it on the Middle East, it's still talking about, well, we could have spent that $1 trillion here on infrastructure, and we could have spent it on schools, and we could have spent it on healthcare. And it's still that same idea that, the government should be able to come in and spend the money and rebuild our country. But me as a conservative, as someone who believes in limited government, I am not someone who believes that the government is what rebuilds this country. I don't believe that the government is what really makes this country strong. I believe it's free individuals in a free market, and I want the government to get out of the way. So in terms of if we didn't spend that here, we could have rebuilt our country here. Well, if you're talking about not spending it at all and actually letting the American people keep more of their money, not building up $20 trillion in debt, but that's not what I'm hearing here. I'm hearing we should, instead of spending it here, we should spend it here. I don't want the government to spend that much anywhere. And that's really the big issue. And that's why I'm talking about when I don't hear enough conservative from him. I don't think Trump is big on that kind of conservative stuff. I think he kind of looks at it like a business and says, well, if we didn't spend that money here, we could have spent it here. But no, I don't want the government spending trillions on infrastructure. I don't want the government spending trillions on manufacturing or whatever. I want the government to spend less. I want the government to do less. You know, I found a piece here from Ben Shapiro who actually made a really good point on this. And I'll read the last paragraph of what he said that kind of makes the same point. He said, so how much of this was conservative? Talking about Trump's speech. Some of Trump's policy prescriptions align with those of conservatives: fewer regulations, lower taxes, border enforcement. Others don't: trade restrictions, massive infrastructure spending. But there was nothing there regarding founding philosophy or what makes us Americans other than the flag and apple pie. And this is what I talked about earlier. He talks about America first, America is great, but he doesn't talk about what really makes America great. It's not the flag. It's not like apple pie or the land. It's the philosophy, the founding principles behind the country, the idea of freedom that makes us great. He says, or what the role of government should be in our lives. So Trump doesn't talk about that. All of which leaves one question. When people applaud wildly, were they truly applauding an agenda or a man? Is Trumpism popular among conservatives, or is Trump popular among conservatives? Is it just about the guy? I think a lot of it is. It's about his persona, what he represents, other than his actual conservative philosophies. I'm not hearing enough of conservative philosophies. Before we go to break here real quick, I do want to play one thing, though, that I meant to play earlier. The last cut of Trump at CPAC. This was a really good conservative thing. This is probably where Trump has really been doing really good conservative things, and it's talking about cutting regulation in business. And he actually signed an executive order that creates a task force to cut a lot of red tape in government. And this is what he said about that at CPAC.
We have begun a historic program to reduce the regulations that are crushing our economy, crushing. And not only our economy, crushing our jobs, because companies can't hire. We're going to put the regulation industry out of work and out of business. And by the way, I want regulation. I want to protect our environment. I want regulations for safety. I want all of the regulations that we need, and I want them to be so strong and so tough. But we don't need 75% of the repetitive, horrible regulations that hurt companies, hurt jobs, make us non-competitive overseas with other companies from other countries. That we don't need.
So I think he's exactly right on that. When you're having like 84,000 pages of new regulations a year coming out, that's causing a real problem. And he signed a bill earlier this week that got rid of some coal regulations that the environmentalists are upset about. But the coal miners are really happy because they want to be able to do their job. And don't forget, that's where you get a lot of your power. So you can go on Facebook and complain about it, is from coal. So I think a lot of that's a good thing. I think that's the kind of stuff that can really make America great again. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. I'm getting some comments on Facebook Live. You can call 407-916-5400 or text to 23680. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'll be right back.
If you miss any of the show, you can download the Beyond Reason podcast on iTunes. This is Orlando's Smart Talk Radio. Beyond Reason Radio continues now.
Yes, welcome back to the show, everyone. This is Orlando Smart Talk Radio. You can call 407-916-5400, text to 23680. I am your host, Michael Yaffee. I will be here till 8 p.m. tonight for this edition of Beyond Reason Radio. I haven't been on all week. I've been hosting the morning show. I haven't had a chance to do Beyond Reason Radio, but we are back, and I know you're all very excited that we are back to hear all the Beyond Reason things. So I'm getting a lot of, I get this comment a lot. Getting some comments on this on Facebook. One person commented and said, Trump maybe is much more conservative than the others, the opposition would have been. Basically saying Trump is much more conservative than Hillary would have been. Okay, I agree with that. Another person said, do we really think that he's a conservative? I don't, but I'll take what I can get at the moment. And I don't necessarily disagree with either of what you're saying. That's why I voted for Trump in the election. I voted for him because he was the best option at the time. I was being realistic. I understand it. And Trump does have some conservative things. But I get that response a lot when I criticize him on some other stuff. That, well, he's not as conservative, but this is the best we can get. Okay, that's fine. But I'm not here to just promote Trump. I'm not here to just promote a person. When we're talking about CPAC, CPAC's role is not to just promote the president. CPAC's role, and what I try to do, is to promote conservatism, to promote ideas of limited government, libertarian philosophy. So when I get behind the microphone, I'm going to call it like I see it. So if I see something that I like, which I did, and I commented on, I'm going to do it. I don't, just because the opposition would have been a lot worse. Okay, well, I can't comment on anything that has to do with Trump and conservatism, I guess, and not being conservative. I'm just not going to talk about it, I guess. I guess we're just not supposed to say it. We're just supposed to be positive about Trump all the time, and that's it. And no, that's not why I'm here. I'm very honest with you about ideas and ideas I want to put forth. Because Trump, at best, is only going to be in office for 8 years, at best. What happens after 8 years? That's why we talk about philosophy. That's why we talk about ideas. That's why it's more than just a person. Because we can't just put our movement around just one person. It has to be around something more than that. And that's why I promote that. Now, I got a text coming in as well that made a good point. Said Trump is not eloquent, so he does not express his conservative views very well. But you can tell that he's truly conservative by the great conservative people he has appointed to cabinet positions and at the Supreme Court. I actually agree with that. But the thing is, he didn't talk about it at CPAC. He didn't even mention his Supreme Court pick at CPAC. So he has picked a lot of good conservative things, and that's the point. But when I look at CPAC, I don't want to just hear a bunch of Trump promoting, and I don't want to hear just campaign speeches. I want to hear and promote conservative ideas because I think that's important to do. So that's what I'm going to do behind this microphone. So, by the way, speaking of CPAC, there was another speech that didn't get a whole lot. They didn't get a whole lot of attention, and it was really good, I thought. And I'm going to play part of it here. It's by Dana Lash, who was a syndicated conservative talk show host out there. Good-looking woman. So that seems to be the thing now to get popular, is to be a good-looking woman in conservative circles. Tom Benson's laughing at me, but I'm right.
And wear leather.
Yeah, or
and
something.
She does. Yeah.
Exactly. So, it's like, why isn't Mike why isn't Mike syndicated or on Fox News ever? Because I'm not a hot woman. Let's just be honest about this. Men are just, they don't care as much. But no, I'm just kidding about that. But she had a really good point because she was just appointed as one of NRA's spokesmen, the National Rifle Association spokesman. She wrote a book about guns not too long ago. And she talked about a story from her past, something that happened in her past that really promotes the idea of why the Second Amendment is so important, why gun rights are so important. And I thought she did a really great job of doing this, so I was going to play it here. This is what she said at CPAC.
When I was a kid, my grandparents, because all my family's from the Ozarks, when I was a kid, I was staying with my grandparents. Myself and my little cousin, we were in my grandparents' bed, and it was a late summer evening. Window was open, breeze was blowing through, and I was just about to sleep. I heard the evening news on. They were wrapping up their broadcast. And then I heard from out in the woods this wailing. It was this inhuman wailing. And at first it didn't register with me. I kept thinking, well, maybe I'm having a bad dream. And it got closer and closer to the house. Now, down in the South, down in the Ozarks, my grandparents never locked their doors. They also don't put their guns up in these big, giant locked rooms. They keep them in wood cabinets with etched glass in the front, like a china cabinet, for guns. And this noise got closer and closer. And finally, I heard the punching of feet in my grandparents' gravel driveway. It was my aunt, who had been beaten within an inch of her life, who was running away in the woods, barefoot and bloodied with broken teeth, because her felon of an SOB ex found her, beat her up, and told her he was going to kill her. And this prohibited possessor went for his criminally possessed firearm, and she ran to my grandparents' house, only place she knew she'd be protected. And with that, my grandpa, I was terrified at that time, he went to the bedroom, this NRA member, World War II Navy vet, went to the bedroom, grabbed his shotgun, went and sat on the front porch, cocked it, and started swinging. And that made me feel safe. And I went back to sleep. Now, when you call the law down from where my family is, on average, 911 call, 20-minute response time, even longer down there. It was about 35 minutes later that the law finally did come. And as it turned out, that abusive ex-con did actually drive to my grandparents' house, turned off his lights, but when he saw the silhouette of that old vet sitting on the porch with a gun, he thought better of it. And that's because the NRA protected his rights, and they protect your rights.
I thought that was a really good story that points out exactly why we have the Second Amendment. That old Army vet was able to protect his family by having a gun. And, I was thinking, what if he had to use that gun? Back then, in that area, if he used the gun to protect his family, it would have been self-defense. He probably wouldn't even gone to jail or anything, and it would have been an open-shut case of self-defense. But there's a part of me that thinks, if it was today and someone did the exact same thing and went on the porch and brought his gun to protect his family and maybe had to use that gun against the person, that he would probably been arrested. Probably they would have a whole case, is this stand your ground? Probably been called out because, you shouldn't have had the gun out like that because you could hurt your kids. And then there might have been protests out of his side of his house or something. And I think there's a lot of people that are questioning using their gun because they're afraid of the legal and social ramifications of being able to use a gun to protect your family. And I think that's sad because her story is exactly right. She goes, the police can't be there all the time. He needed to protect his family, and he used it to protect his family. And she was a young girl, talk about women's rights. She was a young girl who felt safe because he had a gun. And we don't hear enough of these stories. We hear the stories of gun violence and the big stories of mass shootings, but there's so many stories like this where somebody was able to use a gun to protect their property, to protect their family, and they shouldn't be allowed to do that? Of course they should be allowed to do that. So, if you are against the Second Amendment, try talking to her about it. I think she might be able to convince you otherwise. Speaking of women's rights as well, Dana Lash always brings up the point that women being able to carry a gun is definitely a woman's right. You talk about women being able to protect themselves. That's a good way for them to be able to protect themselves because they can't always do it without the gun. It's a great equalizer for them. But there was a billboard that's creating a lot of controversy out there. So I saw the story, posted the picture of the billboard on my Facebook, and asked women if they were offended by it, because a lot of women are offended by what this billboard said. The responses I got were very interesting. So I'll talk about that next. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
Download the iHeartRadio app and catch the Beyond Reason Radio podcast. A conscience in your ear telling you the difference between right and wrong. Yaffee is back on the air.
So, a billboard it's out there in North Carolina is creating some controversy. Some think it's, beyond reason. I don't necessarily think it's beyond reason, but this is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee, the voice of reason in a world that can be and is a lot of times beyond reason. You can give us a call at 407-916-5400. You can text to 23680. We're on Facebook Live as well. You can like the Facebook page at WFLA Orlando. You can like my Facebook page, Beyond Reason Radio, or you can send me a friend request. And I put the picture out of the billboard, put it out there, and I specifically asked women to comment on it and to see if they were offended by it, because some women aren't. This is what the billboard says. I know Tom Benson is in there really waiting. He really wants to know.
I'm ready to jump.
Let's see if maybe your wife would have been offended by it. And anyone, you can call in and tell me, are you offended by this if you're a woman? It says, real men provide, real women appreciate it.
I did see that.
You did?
Yeah.
Real men provide, real women appreciate it. Now, there's no doubt 50 years ago, nobody would have been offended by this. It would have been the normal thing. But some people are saying, what does that mean? Real men providing? No, women should only provide for themselves. How sexist. So, okay, I'm not a woman, so I can't necessarily comment on this. So I asked women if they were offended. I always love the responses about this, because when it comes to a lot of the, like the women's march thing and women's rights thing and all this stuff and women politicians, it's amazing that I see more backlash from women than I do from men on these issues. I just find that very fascinating.
Because men know better than to comment.
Well, exactly, and that's where we are, unfortunately.
Sure.
But this is what people said. A lot of people, like the first comment said, not at all, not offended at all from a woman. Another woman said, this was a really good one, got a lot of likes, said, as one of the first women in the country to graduate from a military academy, a former military officer who served as the only woman on board a ship working in the engine room, no, I am not the least bit offended. Those who are insecure. So she's a very independent woman in a lot of ways, but she's not offended. Okay. Another person said, heck no. Another person says, nope, call me old-fashioned. One person said, I am independent and don't think that the man should be sole provider. But no, this does not offend me. Everyone is different. Okay, so a little bit of a different take on that one. I'm getting a lot of no, not at all, not me.
Open-minded people here. Yeah,
I guess so. Yeah.
I think a lot of people would prefer that be that way for real. But in this day and age, you need two-income families.
Oh, and I'm glad you said that, because I'm getting comments that say exactly that very thing. Actually,
there you go.
One person said, well, we'll get to that. But one person made a good point, said real women were created to do what real men cannot do. We are equal, but our God designed roles that are different. Not offended. I do appreciate the hard work my husband does to provide for the family, and a real man will appreciate all that a real woman does in home and family.
Absolutely.
That's a good point. I thought that was an interesting point. Another person said, my wife might be a bit miffed, but we are a non-standard couple. I'm a house husband. It works well for us, but we get backlash from archaic type. So that's someone where actually the roles are reversed. Mm-hmm. But he's still not necessarily offended. But this is what you were getting at before. I started getting a lot of comments just like this in what you were saying before. One woman said, nope, I'd sure appreciate any man who would provide for me. So there you go.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm not necessarily against a woman providing for me. I wouldn't mind marrying a rich doctor or something who just pays all the bills.
You want a sugar mommy?
Maybe. Might not be too against that, because I work in radio and we don't make any money here. Another person said, not at all. I love it. I love to be a domestic diva around this home. I love that I can do what I do best while my dear husband does what he does best, and God provides for us both. It's very interesting. Another person said, not offended, but saddened. I'm a single mother. Ex did not provide. Very interesting take on this. I would have loved if I had been able to experience traditional roles of a man being provider. Sadly, in today's society, too many men have decided that because of women's lib, that they shouldn't have to strive to provide, then complain that they aren't appreciated. Now, that's very interesting. Her point is that there aren't enough real men who want to provide because of women's ideas like this. Women's liberation, who makes it seem like you shouldn't provide, even though most women probably want the man to provide, just like you were saying earlier, Tom. Another person said, not at all. Somebody said, this post should serve as a filter for those of us who you want to date in terms of me, I guess. So there you go. Some advice, apparently. Another woman said, not at all. All this absurd talk about women's rights. I have had this fed to me since I was a teenager. All these years I have worked, had 2 marriages, navigated through my life, always enjoying the company of decent men who treated me with respect and have not once felt oppressed. If you expect respect from decent men, then they give it. I cannot imagine my life without the wisdom, partnership, and teamwork that men provide. Very interesting. I just found this. I knew I'd get a lot of good responses. I just find this extremely, extremely fascinating because every time I put stuff out there like this, it's women who are not offended by it, first off, and who still support these traditional roles. There's one person said there are 2 ways to love a woman: envelop her with pleasure or wall her off from pain. The first requires a male, the second requires a man. Oh, wow. Well, there you go. Let's see. One person said, I'm a single mom. I'd be honored to have a man who would provide with me. So there you go. Another person says, love it. So there's still a lot of women out there because, I think women by nature a lot of times are vulnerable. By nature. And they want to be somewhat vulnerable. And they like that they can be vulnerable around a man and a man can be the strong provider for them. I think it's in their nature. It doesn't mean I think women shouldn't be able to provide for themselves and be in careers. Trust me. I know some very strong independent women out there and I support them 100%. But I just found that interesting. All right. 1 hour already done. We have another hour to go. I have to talk about Obamacare again. You know I have to talk about Obamacare again because it's everywhere. And of course, I'm still frustrated because it's still law. Why is it still law? Would somebody please explain this to me? Why Obamacare is still law? 407-916-5400. This is Beyond Reason Radio. 1 more hour to go, and we'll be right back. So does CPAC, does the C in CPAC, does it stand for campaign PAC instead of conservative PAC? I'm not sure because I'm still hearing a lot like they're campaigning and not, what we're actually doing. Okay, it wasn't too bad. I talked about it in the first hour of things I liked that Trump said and things I didn't like as so much. But there's one thing that's being talked about everywhere. Oh, by the way, this is Beyond Reason Radio. You all know this. You all know my voice. The voice of reason, Michael Yaffee. We're on Facebook Live as well. Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee, joined by Tom Benson producing. Got 1 more hour to go, Tom.
Looking forward to it.
Yes. A lot of Beyond Reason stuff to get to, and there's nothing more Beyond Reason these days than Obamacare. Before I get to the Obamacare stuff, there's a whole hubbub out there. You like that hubbub?
Hubbub, yes.
Yeah, I'm bringing that back.
That's front porch talk.
There's a whole hubbub out there about there was a gaggle of reporters. It wasn't the actual press briefing, but a side press briefing where Sean Spicer did not invite CNN and Politico.
Right.
And I believe it might have been the New York Times, too.
CNN and the New York Times was first mentioned.
Yeah,
then
and Politico.
AP backed out because the other two weren't asked.
Now, and it turns out that actually Fox, I was just watching on Fox just now, Crowdhammer, and Fox actually did not like that they weren't invited either, which is very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why, which is actually kind of a good point, is that, if a Democrat president ever gets in, then Fox is going to be blocked, and this could start a big precedent.
It's already happened. Obama blocked Fox.
And this is the point. This is the point that I'm getting at. When you're so biased for so long against Trump, and you call out Fox News all those years when Obama's in office. I mean, your chickens are kind of coming home to roost. I'm not saying they should block him like they're doing, but the chickens are kind of coming home to roost where this is going to eventually happen because you've been so biased against Republicans for so long.
And New York Times and CNN and AP, guess what? The sun will still come up tomorrow, and tomorrow's another day.
Yeah, that's true.
What do you expect? I mean, you treat people the way you want to be treated, and the way they're always hammering at them. Why not expect some pushback?
Yeah, I mean, and like I said before, they secretly love it because it gives them more news to talk about.
Oh, sure. Subscriptions are up, ratings are up.
Yeah. I talked about it in the show on last Friday. Why the right hates the media is what I called it, and why they're so upset at the media. And I laid out that the real reason is because of the double standard. That there's just been a double standard with a lot of these media outlets for so long. I got a comment on Facebook that says Obama never disinvited Fox News. Tom Benson, can you look that up for me? Because I believe there was an instance where they did that. So there we go. But there has been a double standard for so long. I outlined it all on the last show. You can listen to the last podcast and check it out. So, Obamacare. I keep hearing promises that we're going to repeal and replace. And I keep hearing promises that we're going to repeal and replace. And all I'm hearing is promises, but nothing's getting done. And it's very frustrating because it should have been done already. There's actually a really good plan out there by Rand Paul. They voted to repeal it 62 times when Obama was in office. And now all of a sudden they're sitting on their hands and they're scared to death. And unfortunately, Boehner, it's come out, that said some comments on that. We're going to get to that. But first, let's go to some audio cuts here from CPAC on that very issue. The first cut I want to play is we have Trump. He said at CPAC, we're going to repeal Obamacare. Oh, I'm sorry. It should say Obamacare.
We're going to repeal and replace Obamacare.
All right. So there we go. It says we're going to repeal and replace Obamacare. So why isn't it done yet? All right. So let's go to Mike Pence. Mike Pence talked about Obamacare, and this is what he said.
President Donald Trump is leading the fight to repeal and replace Obamacare. And let me assure you, America's Obamacare nightmare is about to end.
Okay. So another promise. We're going to do it. Why isn't this done? The fact is that Trump is not leading the fight. This is the big problem. The big problem of why this is not done right now is there's not leadership at the top. And I'm talking about Trump, and I'm talking about Speaker Paul Ryan, and I'm talking about Mitch McConnell. If Trump gets out there on his bully pulpit and says, I want this plan, here is the plan, let's get it done. We should have had a plan already, had years talked about this for years. All they have to do is take Rand Paul's plan, really, and just get it done. But what's happening is the leadership is not doing this at the top, so you have 10 different plans out there that Republicans are fighting over. It shows the lack of if the leadership picks the plan they want, gets it out there, and Trump supports that plan, Congress can back him and we can get this done. But it's never been a huge issue, unfortunately, for Trump. It's never been his number one issue. Obamacare has not been his number one issue. So it came out this week then that former Speaker John Boehner, who when he was in office was saying, we're going to repeal it. He had all these bills to repeal and replace Obamacare when he was in office. He was all talking tough on it when he was in office. All of a sudden now, he's not so tough. Not so tough on this. And he said this, and this is what he said about the Republicans repealing Obamacare.
All this happy talk that went on in November and December and January about repeal. Yeah, we'll do replace. I started laughing because if you pass repeal without replace, first, anything that happens is your fault. They'll fix Obamacare. And I shouldn't have called it repeal and replace because that's not what's going to happen. They're basically going to fix the flaws and put a more conservative box around it.
So this is what we're going to do now? We're not going to repeal and replace it, even though that's what they've been campaigning on forever? When John Boehner was in office, he basically campaigned on this. This shows why there wasn't strong enough effort to get rid of it when John Boehner was in office, because this shows what the leadership really thinks about this. And this is why people are upset at the so-called establishment. And there's really no excuse for this. Let's just get this done. We have free market solutions out there that can get this done. But the Republicans, once again, the Democrats, they always seem to unite. When they put Obamacare in place, they seem to unite on that, but not so much with this. Now, Jim DeMint actually spoke. Former Republican senator of South Carolina said at CPAC, he said, we must and we can repeal Obamacare now. Yes, I agree with that. Except, even though they have a replacement plan ready to go, congressional Republicans have not shared DeMint's confidence. And John Boehner said earlier that, well, they just have not had, Republicans can never agree on health care, he said. They can if there's true leadership coming in on this issue, talking about it. They can and should agree on it. But it's the lack of leadership, I'm telling you. I just got a comment on Facebook. It said, Speaker Boehner was all talk and little action. It sure seems that way now. I mean, if this is what he's saying now, he didn't say it when he was in office, but I bet behind the scenes he must have been saying stuff like this when he was in office. This is why a lot of conservatives were not happy with him, because he wasn't willing to take the bold steps to do this. Now, Ted Cruz, this is why I supported him in the primary, spoke at CPAC, and he called out Republicans on this, and I think he's exactly right. He said there are some Senate Republicans who would like to keep the Obamacare taxes because they want to spend money. So now we're going to keep the Obamacare taxes? It's because too many Republicans believe in big government as well. The senator said in a closed-door meeting with reporters at CPAC, that would be extremely foolish. And then he makes a really excellent point here. He says, I don't think we should replace one 2,000-page monstrosity with another 2,000-page monstrosity. I couldn't agree with that more. That's part of the problem, is there's just too much in it. Too many regulations, too many mandates, too many taxes in it. Cruz said in a discussion of the current struggle to repeal the Affordable Care Act, replace should not entail give me an equally unsustainable government leviathan to replace the one we've got right now. Could not agree with that more. At the very minimum, the Texas senator said two of the biggest requirements for an eventual plan are opening up the insurance market across state lines and expanding health savings accounts. Agree with that more. But then, still he cautioned, we still haven't seen legislative language of what precisely Speaker Paul Ryan is proposing. And this is what I'm talking about even more. I'm hearing all talk from people like Speaker Paul Ryan, Mitch McConnell, Vice President Mike Pence, Donald Trump, his staff, all talk. This should have been done like on day one. And if the Republicans don't do this, they are going to suffer politically. They're going to lose a lot of that conservative base, because there are a lot of people in the conservative base where this is like their number one issue, because it's affecting their daily lives in negative ways. And it needs to be changed. Now, Trump did say at CPAC, that it is a disaster. It's not working. He's exactly right. And I have another story on Obamacare from Bloomberg that I found that was kind of misleading, and we'll get to that as well. 407-916-5400, text to 23680. We're also going to talk about these crazy town halls that are happening. And something I'm a little suspicious of with these town halls, first off. But second, something that just bothers me in general about what's happening at these town halls that I just don't think is healthy. 407-916-5400, text to 23680. We will be right back. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I am your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
Listen to the latest episodes of Beyond Reason. Download the podcast at Spreaker.com, the place where we talk faith, culture, and politics. Beyond Reason Radio continues.
All right, so I got a comment on Facebook Live earlier that said Obama never put out Fox News, never excluded Fox News from anything. Oh, really? Oh, really? Well, it turns out that's actually not the case. There were some instances. Now, we all know that Obama heavily criticized Fox News, calling them, one time I played the audio in the last show where he basically said, when you go to Fox News, it's like getting news through a funhouse mirror. But there was many instances where he actually did not include them in stuff. The White House did keep Fox News off conference calls dealing with the Benghazi attack, for one, despite Fox News being the only outlet that was regularly reporting on it, and despite Fox having top-notch foreign policy reporters. So that's one instance. They have left Chris Wallace's Fox News Sunday out of a round of interviews that included CNN, NBC, ABC, and CBS for not being a part of a legitimate news network. In October 2009, as a part of Obama administration onslaught against Fox News, White House senior advisor David Axelrod said on ABC's This Week that the Fox News channel is not really a news station. Sounds a lot like what Trump is saying about CNN, fake news, right? Basically the same thing.
In 2013, Accuracy in Media, a watchdog organization, did a new analysis of President Obama's press conferences during his first term that showed he clearly favored mainstream media over Fox by a wide margin. Yep. For example, ABC News was called on 29 times, CBS 28, AP 27, NBC 26, and Fox just 14.
Here's another one. During the initial launch of the war on Fox News in October 2009, White House Communications Director Anita Dunn told the New York Times of Fox News, "We don't need to pretend that this is the way that legitimate news organizations behave. Let's not pretend they're a news network the way CNN is." Okay?
Thank God they're not. Well, a lot of things people often forget, that Fox has a lot of opinion personalities, and they're paid to give their opinions. But I think their news reporting, their actual news reporting, is pretty fair and balanced.
Well, who's their main news reporter in the afternoons?
Shepard Smith.
Exactly.
And he's a lib?
Yeah, there's no way that guy's a big Trump-supporting conservative. So.
But if you watch Special Report in the evening at 6 o'clock, that's pretty balanced, pretty fair.
I think so.
Stories.
Yeah, and actually the Special Report was just on, and Krauthammer was talking about, he criticized Trump for not allowing Fox News in, and he pointed out that other media outlets supported Fox News when Fox News was shut out by the Obama administration. See, we're not just making this stuff up. So just pointing that out. I don't even think the guy who commented is actually still listening, of course. Okay, so back to the whole Obamacare thing. And we're going to get into the town halls a little bit later as well, because those are just getting ridiculous. And they say it's all about Obamacare, but something is weird about them. And I'll point that out. I actually have some audio from the town halls. But I found this story from Bloomberg. And it's critical of Obamacare replacement plan, even though there really isn't a replacement plan yet, which is the big problem.
Well, no plan we know of.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Bloomberg is from Zachary Tracer, Billy House, and Anna Edney, so it's by a few different people in Bloomberg Politics, says GOP Obamacare plan would cover fewer people. Blowback grows. Now, this is misleading for one, because if they, for one, adopted Rand Paul's plan, healthcare premiums would go down, and I bet more and more people would be covered because they could actually afford it. So, but they're talking about initially, because they would be on Medicaid or something. It says Republican lawmakers expect that their Obamacare replacement will result in fewer Americans covered by health insurance, a fact that's likely to increase blowback amid growing support for the program. New details of the plan are beginning to emerge, described by lawmakers and their aides, while still being worked out. Why? Why is it still being worked out? I'm sorry. This is the biggest frustration to me. It would do away with the Affordable Care Act's requirement that all Americans have health coverage or pay a fine, and replace it with rules that let people choose not to buy insurance, instead paying higher premiums or penalties if they need it later. The result would be fewer people covered, said Republican lawmakers. Now, this is very interesting, because when you read the headline, it's acting like you would probably think initially, well, fewer people will be covered. That means the Republican plan is bad, and we shouldn't do it. But
maybe Medicaid would pick up some of that.
Well, and a lot of people that are so-called covered under Obamacare would have been covered under Medicaid even before Obamacare was passed. But this is what's very interesting. Representative Dennis Ross of Florida said, not everybody is going to have health care. Some people just don't care enough about their own care. So the reason why less people would be covered is not because the Republican plan is bad and it would make health care unaffordable for a lot of people, but they even admit in this article that the reason why not as many people would be covered is because some people would just choose not to be covered. That's completely different than saying, well, less people are going to be covered because they can't afford it or can't get to health insurance. That is because it would get rid of the mandate and people don't want to find. Some people just wouldn't want to be covered. And you know what? It's a free country. That's their right. If they don't want to buy health insurance, they shouldn't have to buy health insurance. It's called freedom in a free country. So, but I just found that extremely misleading because you hear all this, well, more people are covered under Obamacare. Well, actually, I need to find that article. So there was a whole other article that was talking about how the numbers are misleading. Here's why some of the numbers that Obama has been putting out, Obama put out and Obamacare put out are misleading. One, it doesn't count how many people would have already been covered on Medicaid before Obamacare was passed. Two, they often go back to 2008, okay, or 2007. Well, what happened in 2008? The economy crashed. So there was an uptick in people getting kicked off their health insurance. So it's not really a good gauge. A lot of these people would have gotten health insurance as the economy picked up anyway, even if Obamacare was not passed.
Good point.
So that was another issue. And it was actually another article from someone on Bloomberg that pointed out that it's almost impossible to get the real numbers. But she suspects that instead of they're putting out this number, 30 million, I think, more are covered, that it's probably more around 10 million have been covered under Obamacare. But what they also don't point out is the rest of the country that didn't get on Obamacare or didn't get to keep their plan like they said it. They're having to pay more premiums for the plan like they said it. You still have a bunch of people paying fines because they don't want it because it's too expensive. You have more insurance companies dropping out because of it. Humana says they might drop out completely. You have the death spiral in certain areas, in certain states of Obamacare, which gives people less options in those areas. And the costs still keep going up. So this whole idea that, we have to keep Obamacare and just kind of mess with the edges. No, I'm telling you, what we have to do, and I've said this before, is make healthcare affordable again. Then we can get more people covered. And this is the whole other issue. They always throw out this term covered. We want more people covered. Okay? You know, everyone's covered in Cuba, right? Do you think they like their health care? Everyone was covered in the Soviet Union, right? Exactly. Everyone's covered in North Korea, right?
And Canada.
In Canada. But their health care sucks for a lot of people. So when we say they're covered, how many of these people are covered under Obamacare but really hate it because it's high deductibles and costs a lot of money? So we have to think beyond just covered. We have to think about quality care. We have to think about affordability. And we have to think about getting costs down in the healthcare market. These are all things that Obamacare did not do. So they always throw, more people are covered, but they're covered under crappy insurance. 407-916-5400, text to 23680. So we have a bunch of town halls out there of people who say they still want Obamacare. We'll talk about that. And we have a lot more to get to. It's Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
If you like Beyond Reason Radio, well, make sure to show it by liking the Facebook page at facebook.com/Beyond Reason Radio. Your safe space for conservative thought, not for political correctness. Yaffee is back right now.
Yes, and by the way, I just got a comment on Facebook Live that said, just got here. What did I miss? This is why I post the podcast of the entire show after the show. So what you want to do is go download the Beyond Reason Radio app, the Google Play or Apple App Store. You can get it on iHeartRadio as well. It's on the WFLA website. It's at beyondreasonradio.com. Anywhere podcasts are available, because I do get a lot of people that catch it in the middle of the show, that catch the tail end of the show, that just catch the beginning. And what you have to do is you have to listen to the whole show. You can't. You have to. If I'm doing a 2-hour show like I do tonight, it should be a requirement by you, a mandate, to listen to all 2 hours of Beyond Reason Radio. Your life will be much better for it.
The ultimate would be they have to pay a fine if they don't listen.
Yes, I could be like Obama and force them to pay a fine if they don't listen to every episode of Beyond Reason Radio. Yes, I'm your voice of reason here, Michael Yaffee, joined by Tom Benson, who is producing. So speaking of Beyond Reason stuff, there's been a lot of these town halls going on around the country with these Republican senators, Republican congressmen. They try to have a town hall to see what their constituents saying. It's a normal thing. And they've gotten pretty rowdy. And one thing they do is the crowd puts up these red cards or red paper or something. What does that mean? I have no idea what that means. Someone said maybe it's a soccer reference. If it's a soccer reference, then I really have no idea what it means, because it's soccer. But I mean, what are they, like communists? I really don't know. Like I really should know this, but I don't know. They put up these red cards. They always have signs, like very nicely printed signs and stuff. It's very, very interesting, very spontaneous, I'm sure. Huh?
Passed out in the hundreds on the way in the door.
But so one example of this is Senator Tom Cotton from Arkansas. He had a town hall, I believe, last night, and it got pretty rowdy. Here's actually some audio of it getting pretty rowdy. Here it is.
I'm a member. I'm a member of the Senate Intelligence Committee, and let me.
So, and that kept happening where he couldn't speak. So, this is my question then. What is the point of these people showing up at these town halls? Because usually town halls are to hear from the constituents, to ask questions, to see what your congressman is doing. He gives you answers. That's not what's happening at these town halls. What their goal is at these town halls is disruption. All they want to do is disrupt.
Resist.
All they want to do is resist. All they want to do is cause chaos. All they want to do is to shout you down, to shut you down because you might not agree with what they think. This is taking over our politics in so many ways, and it's not a good thing. Because, for one, now I'm not going to take you as seriously. Now, if there's just a bunch of crowds showing up and they're just shouting and yelling and not letting him speak and just, get him out of there, no Obamacare. No, I'm just going to think you're not serious here. You just lost and you're mad because you lost. And that's what a lot of people are saying, because this is not, it's not a good thing, I think. And the other thing is, I think there's some organization to these. Now, a lot of people accuse the Tea Party of that when the Tea Party was doing this. I'm not necessarily saying that, everyone says, George Soros is funding it, like he's in a room or something and just giving money to people to go out and do these. I do think there has been some evidence that maybe Obama's organizations, what is it called, Organizing for America, has been a part of this.
He's a community organizer, so I wouldn't put it behind him to organize this kind of stuff. Yeah,
I'm not necessarily saying it's coming from the top. I think it might be coming
disgruntled supporters and people who were maybe members of his government, bureaucrats.
Well, I think a lot of it's probably just coming from local organizations who didn't like Trump, and they're mad, and this is what we do now. We protest everything. So they're like, you know what we should do? We should just organize a bunch of people, a bunch of Democrats who don't like Trump, and go to these town halls. And that'll make them think that, we have to keep Obamacare. We'll just go and we'll yell and we'll disrupt and we'll be angry. And that'll get the point across. And it's sad, really. It's sad because, I thought one of the good things one of the good things CNN did is they did a debate between Bernie Sanders and Ted Cruz not too long ago on Obamacare. And they had people ask questions on both sides, and they let Ted Cruz and Bernie give both their takes, and they had a real debate, and Ted Cruz did really well, actually. And I thought that was good, but that's not what's happening at these town halls. That's what's so concerning to me. It's not just people really concerned. It's people that are specifically there to shut you down, to shout you down, and to disrupt what you're doing. And so now I'm not going to take you seriously. No, now I'm just thinking you're just organizing because you hate Trump and you hate Republicans and you're just trying to shout them down. And you know what's going to happen next, and it's already starting to happen, is you're going to start having Republicans and conservatives and Trump supporters who are going to start showing up at these things, and they're going to start trying to shout you down when you try to shout down the other side. And you're going to have Republicans show up at Democrat things and try to shout them down. And then we're just going to, start a civil war? It seems like, is that the goal here? Can we just have some, reasonable debate? Maybe? If you don't like what's being done, you go, you ask your questions, you say your concerns. But that's not what they're doing. It's disruption. And it's not good. And it's chaos. And maybe it's because they don't think their debates can actually win. They don't want to have debates. And, they lost the election. So they feel like, all we can do now is complain. Well, you lost. You lost the election. You should have showed up to vote. Should have got enough people in these areas to show up to vote. And if you don't like what Tom Cotton's doing, you show up to vote and you vote him out. And if he doesn't get voted out, then that just shows that more people support what he's doing than you people who are just trying to show up at town halls and trying to disrupt. And that's what I think about it. It's not good. I don't even support when conservatives do this, when they go to these things and they just shout you down and they just disrupt and they just yell and they just scream and we're just screaming at each other and nothing gets done. So speaking about opposition against Trump and Trump supporters and the Trump administration, I don't know. We'll see if Steve Bannon has a way of combating this. But this might be a little beyond reason. There are groups out there who think they have the solution to stop Donald Trump and his agenda. What's that solution? Well, they want to cast a spell on him. I'm not kidding. This is not a joke. There are groups out there who think they're going to cast a spell on Donald Trump. Good luck with that. He might have already had some spells cast on him. I don't know if all the spells mixed together. I don't know what that means. This is a great story. It's from Ellie.com. It says, those who don't like Donald Trump and the current Republican administration are mobilizing in all sorts of ways. They're speaking up in town halls and calling their representatives. They're organizing protests and demonstrations. And for the magically inclined, they're casting spells. Starting at midnight on Friday, midnight tonight, the spells are coming. It's like Halloween. Witches around the country are calling for a mass spell to be cast on Donald Trump every night of a waning crescent moon until he is driven from office. Exactly what I thought when I saw this thing.
Here it comes. Wait for it.
I put a spell on you.
Yes. That's what they're doing.
Because you're mine.
That was an actual hit record back in the 50s. Screaming Jay Hawkins,
yeah.
I put a spell on you.
See, when I thought of this, I was thinking of the time when, remember the movie Hocus Pocus?
Sure.
And they did a song. I guess it was kind of like that song, but they did another version, and it was I Put a Spell on You.
Yeah.
I kept thinking that when I saw this. But the spell was publicized by Michael M. Hughes, who told Ellie.com that it was tweaked from multiple spells he saw going around private witchcraft groups. He published a spell, and he wants a lot of people in witchcraft. Ooh, there's even like a flyer going out, and they had it on social media. This is what the flyer says. Witches, we need you. Mass ritual, a spell to bind Donald Trump and all those who obeyed him. I'm telling you, though, I think Steve Bannon, I think he might be kind of a witch on his own or something, or a sorcerer, and he might be able to counter it. So there's going to be so not only are we having, real shouting wars and riots and protests, but now we're having spiritual wars, I guess, in terms of all this.
I bet you there's some Donald Trump dolls out there with a lot of pins sticking into them.
He just doesn't feel them anymore. There's just so many. This is like acupuncture to him at this point. Hughes explained that he chose a binding spell because we're not wishing harm on anyone. We're just trying to stop the harm they're doing. It's not the equivalent of punching a Nazi in the face. It's the equivalent of tying him up and taking his bullhorn away. Good luck with that. You're going to need a very, very powerful spell to try to take away Donald Trump from speaking and bullhorn. One person texted, maybe conservatives should have tried that on Obama. Yeah, what? You know what? That's a good point. You think there are conservative witches out there? There gotta be. So if you get the conservative witches, maybe they can cast a spell against the anti-Trump witches, and then you're going to have a whole witch war here going on.
Sounds like a video game.
Exactly right. I thought that was great. All right, one more segment to go. Having a lot of fun here. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
Subscribe to the Beyond Reason podcast today on your Stitcher app and hear the voice of reason anytime. Your voice of truth in a world of fake news. Beyond Reason Radio continues right now.
Yes, this is the show that puts a spell on you. And you can't help but listen to every show. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee, the voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason, joined by Tom Benson producing. I got a text came in earlier, Tom, when I was joking about how we should make it a mandate to listen to Beyond Reason. Someone said, be careful about those threats. People might attempt a boycott of Beyond Reason. Please do. In fact, I want you to plan a protest of Beyond Reason because I could use the attention. I'm just saying.
And if
it might be a lot of fun.
If you're going to march somewhere and demonstrate, please call the media.
Yeah, yes, and bring your smartphones. Say who you're marching against, and there you go. Another texter just texted in and said Trump will hold a town hall at Cassadaga next crescent moon. Oh, it's good stuff. Okay, so speaking of Beyond Reason, there's a lot of talk about transgender people choosing to change their gender or whatever. Even though that doesn't mean anything. I'd never heard of this before, though. Apparently, dolls are now choosing to be transgender. Now, technically, most dolls don't really have genders because they don't have the parts when you think about it. But there's a new transgender doll. So I got this from The Blaze. If you were wondering why dolls aren't being allowed the civil right to choose their own gender, you can stop wondering because we now have transgender dolls. Toner Doll Company is marketing a transgender doll patterned after the LGBT activist Jazz Jennings. Like any other girl, 16-year-old Jazz Jennings always loved dolls and dresses, but Jazz wasn't a normal girl. She was born a boy. Then you're a boy. I'm sorry. She is one of the youngest people to be documented as transgendered and has garnered her a following. So the doll company made a transgender doll after Jennings. I'm sure all the girls or boys who think they're girls or girls who think they're boys are going to go shop for this now and get the transgender doll. This stuff is just getting crazy. I still feel like our country's in a lot of trouble, Tom, if we can't agree on the simple fact that you're a boy if you have the boy parts, and you're a girl if you have the girl parts, and a boy goes in the boy's bathroom, and a girl goes in the girl's bathroom. You know, I feel like we're in a lot of trouble as a country if we can't, even agree on that. So I thought, and there was another interesting article here. CNN had an opinion piece on this by Heath Fogg Davis, who's very upset that Trump rescinded the transgender letter, the transgender initiative for schools. Obama had a letter that went out to the schools and through the Department of Education that told them to let people choose whatever bathroom they want to go into, no matter what their gender, they can choose whatever gender they are. And she's very upset about this ruling. She says the Trump administration's decision to repeal the guidelines put in place by Obama about transgender students both misunderstands the gravity of the civil rights issues at stake for transgender youth, as well as transgender school staff and visitors. So it's a civil rights issue. It's just like when we had separate bathrooms for blacks. That's what they're saying. It's the same thing. Even though a black person cannot control, they couldn't control. They're born black no matter what. This is people who are just saying they're something different, and they have complete control over it. And underestimates how easy the so-called transgender bathroom problem would be to solve. Many people assume that sex-segregated bathrooms are necessary, but they are not, even in schools. So what they're saying is, her point is, or I guess it's a he. I don't know, Heath. I couldn't tell by the name.
That's
Heath,
a guy.
There's a picture here. Heath's a
usually,
guy name.
Yeah, usually.
Okay, it's a very unusual
but
name.
in this day and age, who knows?
Yeah, with this kind of story, who knows? But what they're saying is this is preventing transgenders from using the bathroom. And by preventing them from using the bathroom, that is going against their civil rights.
What about the civil rights of people who don't want to be subjected to something that could be uncomfortable?
That's a very good point. Doesn't mention that in this article.
Of course not.
For some reason. Many gender-conforming transgender people, such as myself. Oh, so there is a transgender. It is a girl or a guy. I don't know anymore. Many gender-conforming, such as myself, do not experience gender identity discrimination in accessing public bathrooms because we do not appear to others to have altered our birth sex identity. So then what's the problem? Then why do we need to then why do you want us to pass laws to protect you?
To further the agenda.
It's because they want validation. That's what they want. They don't want us to just allow them to use the bathrooms. They want us to accept that what they're doing is okay, that it's normal, that they really were born the other sex, even though there is no scientific evidence to back that up at all. But here's the issue. Saying we're getting in the way of their civil right to use the bathroom. Actually, we're not. You can still use the bathroom. We're not telling you can't use the bathroom. We're just telling you got to use the bathroom based on your sex. Is that too much to ask? Really? That if you're a boy, and if you have the boy parts, you're a boy. If you have the girl parts, you're a girl. Just because you say you're something else doesn't mean it. And, boys go in boys' bathrooms and girls go in girls' bathrooms. But you know what's going to happen? They're just going to get rid of gender bathrooms. That's our future. They're just going to be there either is going to be just one bathroom everywhere that we all share, or there's just going to be, I don't know, a third bathroom that they add or something for transgenders, which that wouldn't work either because they don't want to even be considered a transgender. That's not the goal. What they want to be considered is what they believe they are. If they think they're a girl, they just want you to consider them a girl, even though they're not. This has been Beyond Reason Radio. If you missed any of the show, make sure to catch the podcast of the show anywhere podcasts are available. You can just go to beyondreasonradio.com and go to the WFLA website. It's been a lot of fun. I will be back next week as well, and make sure to send me a friend request on Facebook and tell me what's going on out there. That is Beyond Reason. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'll check you guys next time.